Poverty has long been one of the most difficult aspects of human societies today. But to solve it, one needs to look at it from a bunch of different perspectives. Here are some approaches to think about poverty that may just solve it for good. Welcome to One Away. If you're interested in what a poverty-free world can look like, please make sure to watch this video till the end, as we give you some promises you can look forward to. But before that, please leave us a like if you find this video useful. And subscribe to this channel for updates on our videos. Pay it forward. One only needs to look at two of the densest countries in the world to know that poverty can come from anywhere. That is to say, China and India. And even though China has made most of its population cross over to a fairly well-off middle class, it's made it so with a significant amount of force to make the mandate. India too has to overcome these problems, along with a host of other problems, via other approaches. And though Africa isn't as dense as a demographic as both India and China, it has also its fair share of poverty, along with healthcare and global warming. But the gap between rich and poor shows promise, if these countries have something to say about it. China, India, and Africa also figure into future superpowers, despite their history with poverty and economic inequality. Ever keen and an observant of these is Bill Gates, who has given his prediction that these poor countries get the axe cut by 2035. And that by 2050, the gap between rich and poor countries will prove non-existent. The secret to the promise. Foreign aid. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that help from people and countries who are rich makes the world a much better place. Many people believe that a proper government is a real solution. But if Bill Gates and Bruce Wayne have anything to prove, is that billionaires with their investments and funds can level the field of poverty. That field is called mixed capitalism, and much of its focus is around technology, science, and public education. Part of this has already come into Africa, with the investments of both cell phones and malaria control, which has cut up rural poverty. Information science, and intelligence aid. Artificial intelligence is all the rage these days, and some people are more concerned about whether they'll destroy our lives. But many governments are optimistic that AI can make the world a much safer, more livable place. One of the most difficult gaps that poverty makes is in between low-wage jobs and high-wage jobs. With great AI, many of these jobs that are fairly automatic can get accomplished fairly well. Carnegie Mellon University's Hans Moravec, for example, cites that with these robots, it can allow humans to occupy much of their days to pursuits like art and social projects. This leaves the governments and funders to focus on high-wage jobs or knowledge work. This means a focus on free education, free healthcare, and, as former US presidential candidate Andrew Yang would have had it, universal basic income. As unconventional as the promise is, it makes sense given that poverty isn't about one's journey to become a millionaire. Nor is it about from rags to riches. It's about an appropriate distribution of wealth for all to benefit. Earth technologies, renewable resources. There's no question about it. The links between economic poverty and global warming are too intertwined. It affects decisions from the top and those at the bottom. But, for the sad bit, those at the bottom don't necessarily have a choice. This is why a satisfactory understanding of the science of renewable energy is one of the most important things that needs to happen. And of course, free water systems, which is needed by all. Once that happens, most can live a fairly decent life, with the reduction of environmental diseases as a return of investment. Environmental diseases, of course, affect a great number of people, from mold toxicity, seasonal allergens, and bacterial viral infections. Most of which can occur in houses that are not properly designed and polluted areas. And this affects optimal healthcare, which many of the poor can barely afford. The impact of these solutions is great, but if it's not in focus, it could take a while. The World Wildlife Fund, for example, reports that most of the renewable energy projects have come up from only a few areas, namely wind turbine generation, solar energy, hydro-ocean power, biomass from waste and geothermal. The funds for these alone only take 2% of a country's GDP, yet more work needs to be done. The promise is, of course, for the entire population, which include the poor, have access to 95% renewable, clean energy. Education, we need everyone on board. Politics aside, all people deserve an education. It's as important as anything else, due to the likelihood of better decision making. Most of these, of course, affect the poor in most serious cases, when job opportunities are all but nil. And the numbers reflect these cases. Even after the 2000s and 2010s, 23.6% of the global population can't read, and that is a 7% reduction in the overall workforce, according to a report from the Copenhagen Consensus Center. Though correlations aren't the same as causation, there are few markers of progress than education and literacy. In Korea, where a strong 12 years of school work also established a 23-fold growth in the per capita income since the 1950s. Whereas in Pakistan, with far less emphasis on public education, had only seen 3-fold growth. Education is one of the reasons why humanitarian projects like the X Prize Award has given its contributions to ending illiteracy. People need, and people deserve it, and we don't need a war to find out whether the effects are real. What do you think is the one solution that can put an end to poverty? Interested to know what makes places like China, India, and Africa future superpowers? Then you'll want to check out our video on the top 5 superpowers in the world. And, if you're interested in other future solutions that can make poverty and even disease a non-issue, then, head on to our video on 10 shocking things which will happen in the next 100 years.